The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Maynard Bangs presiding. Your eyes for the Honorable Judge Bangs.
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of The People versus Twilight, a 2008 romantic fantasy film about Bella Swan falling for the mysterious Edward Cullen and the trials and tribulations their courtship endures. Very vague. Really not too much information in there. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in the courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Marty Ketola and Mr. Clif Campbell, it's a team up! You are representing the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
Twilight is a bad film. We will talk about various reasons why Twilight is a bad film, and among them will be horrible dialogue, bad pacing, and just general bad decision-making in the writing and the filmmaking process. Basically, everything it takes to make a movie outside of, filming it in the sound.
Nice.
Oh, short but sweet. Yeah. Cliff, you're just seconding that? Thumbs up from you?
So I second everything that he said. And we're gonna this is a terrible movie.
This shit. Here it comes.
Yeah, this is a terrible movie, and I can't wait to put it in his grave and never look at it again.
Thank you both. Appearing on behalf of the defense is Mr. Dylan J. Schlender. Please present your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have done a lot of movies on Reels of Justice, but I would dare say none have the reflexive power of Twilight. We can all remember 2005 through 2008, and everyone had an opinion on the book and or the film, regardless if they had seen or read it. I, for one, recall an exchange I had with a rather corpulent fellow at a science fiction convention. He literally shouted across the room, "Vampires don't sparkle," and Lestat would kick Edward's ass. I found invoking Lestat to be interesting, as Lestat's less than masculine identity and appeal to the fairer sex undoubtedly helped lay the groundwork for Twilight, but let's not digress. But now that I'm really
happy I wasn't that corpulent fellow.
No, it wasn't. No, that's a real story. Mike Shiragi will confirm. However, now that I've seen and read Twilight, I am comfortable saying a lot of the knee-jerk responses are misguided at best or lies at worst. Now, I'm not accusing the prosecution of such responses. However, we need to acknowledge how tainted this conversation is. It has been metaphorically poisoned, and I am here to metaphorically suck out the poison. So in this case, I, of course, hope to respond to the best arguments the prosecution has. And I would also like to discuss intentionality, especially as it relates to an adaptation of a novel. And I would like to discuss new ways to view this movie. As is my style, I will be bringing cutting-edge analysis that I did not find anywhere else online, including the deepest depths of Reddit film theory.
What about IMDb?
No, definitely not on IMDb either. This is a completely original take.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. I'll have you know our juries are not tainted. All right, they've all been scanned before, and we only decided on jurors that did not.
Before.
Exactly. Yes, and it just happened to be the same jurors we have every week. But
I trust the system.
You should. Mr. Ketola and Mr. Campbell, please proceed with your first exhibit.
Yeah, 15 plus years have not been kind to this film at all. The bandwagon appeal it had at one time is completely gone. And I think nobody really cares about this franchise anymore. It's not Harry Potter or some of the others that continued. Basically, if you were 12 years old and you enjoyed this back when, because it was a lot of pretty people and no personality, and you thought it was the greatest thing ever because you were 12, you didn't tend to bring that with you into adulthood. And now let's go over some of the terrible, terrible dialogue in this. And Cliff, go for it. You picked out some really choice stuff.
Well, sure. I'd love to. Oh, honey, I literally repel technology. There's no way he's so skinny, talking about whether a guy's padding his Speedo. So what? You read minds? You are my life now. Say that to a girl in real life and find out what happens. She'll run from you so fast it won't even be funny.
Now, if you're a handsome vampire, objection, Your Honor.
Death is easy. Life is hard.
Ooh.
That's true.
I never gave any thought to how I would die. I leave you alone for a few moments and the wolves descend. This is bad.
That's foreshadowing.
Even for young adult fiction, this is bad.
Yeah.
All right, order. I'd like to hear the objection from the defense.
Look, that especially that. First of all, a lot of these lines do work in the context of the movie. That last line, especially, I leave you alone for a second and the wolves descend. I mean, spoilers, Jacob is a werewolf. We don't find that out in this movie, but that's the foreshadowing. Yes.
I missed that part.
I stood up and clapped at that line.
Yeah, right. Come on. And so
werewolves in this movie?
No, they're implied werewolves, but we find out about them later because this is just the first.
So then it doesn't work in the movie because we don't know Jacob's really a werewolf.
No, but it's foreshadowing the next movie.
But it's foreshadowing the next movie.
Yeah, movie,
but we don't really know within the context of this movie that's a joke.
All right, order. Is there any scenes, Mr. Schlender, that suggest at all his werewolf status?
Well, yes, absolutely. When he's talking about the tribe elders, about how we've come from wolves, and keeping in mind that this movie would already have been out when the other books were already out as well. I mean, so assuming like there was a wolf connection, even if let's do it this way. Let's assume
Your Honor, he's reaching.
No. You know what? Let's assume Clif is 100% right. We have nothing to base this werewolf theory on. We can still then say that Edward was making a reference to the expressed heritage of Jacob, who said his people came from wolves. So he could have been making a derogatory dig at him, referring to him as a wolf, as he referred to his ancestors before. Completely absent the werewolf mythology, it still works.
And just this may not count, but was the second book already out by the time the first movie was?
I think it would have to have been because the second.
I think it was
so fast.
So I worked the theater when this movie came out, and
I'm going to let the jury decide, and I'm going to toss it back to the prosecution.
It's interesting you bring up the whole werewolf thing because it's another thing that I'll bring up throughout the case. This movie, like all movies that are featured on Reels of Justice, if they're considered to be good, they have to stand on their own. I shouldn't have to watch other movies to like this one. I shouldn't have to read books or even know of their existence to enjoy this film. Now let me go into my second exhibit, as it were. What was the second exhibit? The bad pacing?
Pacing and plot structure.
So let's see here. To start with, 10 minutes in, nothing to grasp onto. 12 minutes in, the crucial plot point of what Bella wants to eat at the diner. 90 minutes in, it's baseball time. Why not? We need some sort of conflict. And now here are the bad vampires come that were briefly mentioned before. And now it's all just set up. So Cliff, do you got more to go off on this?
Yeah. I mean, look, you don't get your first explanation of what the hell's going on until you're 35 minutes into this movie. But
it's a 2-hour movie. That's plenty of time.
Until they get to the beach. And they have this boring conversation about, well, back in the day, there's this legend about these, my Native American ancestry is where we were wolves and there were vampires around. Other than that, you spend 30 minutes watching this girl basically have a bad time in a small town. Building on that real quick.
I could do that.
In the book and in the movie, this is a town of 3,100 people. That school is a multi-million-dollar school with way too many kids going to it for a town of 3,100 people.
A third of the population are students.
It's a third of the population easily are students. She's got 30 kids. Look, my dad went to a small town. He graduated. He had 26 kids in his graduating class. There's no way. That school is way too big.
So this school,
why did they do it? Because it's pretty and it looks good in the movie.
And this family of vampires, they feel the need to keep up appearances by going to high school. How quick would that fall apart?
It's bad. It's a bad plot device built on a bad love story, a love triangle that isn't really a love triangle, because she doesn't really love Jacob. She loves Edward.
Oh, hold on a minute. Now you're telling on yourself. You're saying we have to ignore the other books, and you're trying to say this is supposed to be a love triangle. It's not. Jacob's a bit player. She's flirting with him to get information. This is not a love triangle by any stretch of the imagination.
Wait a minute. His dad makes it very clear that Jacob is interested in her when he brings Jacob over and drops him off and says, Jacob's been talking about
love
you this
is not how love triangles
time.
work.
I am going to sustain that from Mr. Schlender. Jacob's not a very major character in this. He is a little bit more foreshadowed. So the love triangle comes later. It's not in this film. So
thank you, Your Honor.
I disagree. I think there's tons of setup in there, and I think that Jacob's infatuation with her is obvious in this.
Well, of course it's obvious, but that's not how love triangles work. Like, he's on the outside looking in.
That's why it's not a love triangle. It never is.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
No, it's not.
All right, order. Marty had a great point that I'd like to hear Mr. Schlender counter.
Team Jacob, Team Edward. Yeah.
The reason for the vampires attending school.
No, so this is an interesting point, because it is a common criticism, like, why are they attending school? And they do have an explanation. They say that the younger they can appear, right, the longer they can stay in a place. So if they're able to pass themselves off as 16 or 17, they're able to stay in a place longer. So that means they probably won't be able to stay in Forks forever, obviously, right? But they could keep reinventing their identities. And if they keep reinventing them younger, part of that is going to high school. So if you're just being like the weirdos in high school versus maybe like the weirdo homeschool kids or something, it's a calculated risk. Maybe the smarter thing would be to say they're quote unquote homeschooled, but that's not how they decided to play it. And obviously it's been working.
Well, and there wouldn't be no Twilight movie or Twilight book if they weren't going to school. How was Bella going to meet Edward except in high school?
Well, then why do they decide to play baseball? They know that's going to drag the attention of the other vampires. That doesn't even make sense. Just don't play baseball.
Well, okay. So what Marty's referring to is Alice's power. Alice is one of the vampires in the Carlisle's clan there, so what her power is, she gets kind of like fragmented visions of the future based on the course of current events, and that they are subject to change based on how they act. Now, these evil vampires, obviously, Carlisle, who's in charge of the Cullen family, right? He's making the calculation that it would be better to meet them deep in the woods, right? Where they're away from civilization, other humans that they could hurt. Now, in the movie, they've already hurt people. In the book, they had not. So again, it makes sense. It's like, well, we don't want them coming into town to meet us. Let's meet them and get them the measure of them out in the woods where we could keep humans safe.
But what you're referring to is all in the book, not in the movie.
There's not any
exposition about the baseball. No, in the baseball, Carlisle doesn't say, let's meet these vampires by attracting them by playing a baseball game. He doesn't. There's no exposition or dialogue.
No, you just said
that's sustained. That's sustained, Mr. Schlender. Carlisle's motivation is not to lure out the vampires in the film.
No. Because you just said that they hinted at it with Alice's vision, correct? Which they do.
No, I didn't. You did. No, I never said anything about Alice's vision. You brought Alice into the conversation.
No, because that's how they knew about it. You said that they hint that the vampires would find them. They know about that because of Alice's visions, right?
No, Alice has the vision after they're playing baseball and they show up and it's suddenly a bad deal, right? Like once she realizes that they're there, that's what triggers the shatter in the future that she sees. She doesn't know of it before the baseball game.
No, but you just said, why would they have the baseball game if they knew it was going to attract the bad vampires? That's what you said. So then how did they know it was going to attract the bad vampires?
I don't know. But why would you have a baseball game that's super loud?
The lightning, right? The thunder. They had the disguise, or
right. They're out there making a shitload of noise. It's going to attract people, God knows who, using this lightning and thunder to cover
No,
it.
it's not going to attract anyone. That's why they play baseball while there's the thunderstorm going on.
All right.
So
I'm confused personally. So let's get back to the prosecution.
The problems with the movie, our third point, all the weird decisions and the bad things, like waiting 80 minutes in to try to put some sort of crucial plot point, which is really just a setup for sequels that I might not even watch.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. There's nothing at stake in this movie until those vampires show up. Absolutely nothing. There's nothing to lose other than watching maybe Bella not get a date. There's nothing in this movie to lose. There's nothing at stake. It's just bad. It's just bad plot structure.
Question from the bench. You guys mentioned the dialogue. What'd you think of the performances?
It's a bunch of pretty people. Most of them can't act.
They're not given anything to do.
Yeah, that's true. That too.
I
mean, Anna Kendrick is in this. Anna Kendrick is the most talented person in this movie. They use her for like 5 seconds. She can't save this movie. It's
true.
Not going to happen.
Tell them about the running. The running.
Oh, the running. So you guys remember The Price is Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's still around.
You remember that game they would play with the little guy who would yodel and go up the mountain? That's what he looks like running. That's what that is. I was thinking back to The Flash and thinking about how much more I enjoyed that running than the running in this movie.
He's also in the movie Remote.
Yeah,
that little yodeling guy. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I love that
also, why do we have so many flying, flying? These vampires don't fly. They don't turn into bats. There's no flying, but there's tons of just these long flying shots over the mountains or so. It's a bunch of weird decisions when making this film. And it tends to detract from what is already a pretty bad movie.
Mr. Schlender, why is there flying? I don't.
Well, I mean, if you're referring to the sweeping shots, not the actual vampires flying, because obviously they don't fly in this movie, like you said.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
to me, it's a weird thing to put like kind of this flight aesthetic in a movie with vampires that don't fly, because usually a lot of times you're either showing the landscape or doing like a POV or something.
I disagree. I think it works in this because it's establishing like how big this area is, the wilderness. I mean, we have to remember like the thick cloud coverage is a big plot point, because obviously if they're in the sun, they sparkle too much, so, it can't be given away like that. So I think having that view of the sky, and then when you contrast that, because then you got to remember too, a piece of this is how Bella's contrasting her life in Phoenix to her new life in Forks. So it's important to be able to see that with her.
No one misses Phoenix.
If that's where all your friends
are.
No
one misses Phoenix.
And her family. Come on.
No.
And it's probably more like Scottsdale, let's be honest.
All right. Marty and Clif, do you have any further exhibits before you rest?
Yeah, I want to say that when the old phones are the most interesting part of the movie, it's bad. Look at that old Nokia phone. Also, a movie aimed at preteens, in order for it to be considered good, there should be some appeal to people of other ages. It shouldn't just be for the kids. I mean, you go to Paddington and that everybody loves that one. If you go to this one, it's really just for the preteens or people who are older watching it ironically because it's so bad it's good. Well, you know what so bad it's good means in this court. It means bad.
That's true. I agree with that. Mr. Schlender, are demographics not allowed to have their own space?
Whoa, let's take it easy on that question, Judge. I mean, as long as they're not being forced into those spaces, right? Look, I think what Marty is saying is fair up to a point. This movie is very, very much targeted to that female teenage demographic. The novel was, and so it makes sense that the book was as well. So it's going to do things that are a bit different, and the sensibilities are going to be a bit different. I think Clif made a good example when he's like, what are the stakes? I don't get it. It's like, yeah, it is about Bella getting a date.
Oh, I didn't say don't get it. I just said there aren't any stakes. Period.
No, but here's the thing: there are stakes, though, and you tried to be flippant and dismiss it as, "Oh, Bella doesn't get a date." Well, newsflash: you know what teenage girls worry about in high school? They worry about getting dates. They worry about things like this. Bella is.
Well,
then, let me finish, sir.
The newsflash.
I'd like to. Let's let the.
This
I
is
would
a
like to
toxic
defend.
example of that. Then
Wait,
no,
I want to hold
it's
this
obsessive
thought.
behavior.
Order. Hold this thought, Mr. Schlender. You finish your thought, and then we'll hear the rebuttal.
Okay, so my point is, this is stuff that teenage girls worry about, and we can't be so flippant to dismiss it. In a movie like Twilight, the novel like Twilight is a fantasy, an exaggeration of these things, because obviously real teenagers aren't worried about going out with vampires, but real teenagers do think about things that vampires can represent in cinema and in novels, things like death, immortality, this idea when teenagers say, "I'll love you forever," right? And they carve their names and initials and hearts on trees. These are real feelings and emotions they're having. Now, all of us being very old can look back and laugh and go, "Oh, if only they knew, if only they grow up." Well, you know what? Bella hadn't grown up yet. And you know what? She may never grow up, just like Edward never grew up. Those are important themes and messages in this movie. And I don't think they're toxic. I think what you're seeing are these being exaggerated to really drive home some of the points that the movie is trying to make.
All right. I'd like to hear the rebuttal now.
I disagree with basically everything you're saying. I don't think it's a good example of a relationship, and I don't think it's something that teen girls should be aspiring to. I think it's a very bad. I think it's a very bad example.
I did not say that they should be aspiring to it. I said
you said it.
He let you finish, Mr. Schlender.
You said that these are the things that teen girls are worried about, but my worry is that they're going to try to emulate this type of thing and aspire to it, right? And it's not a good relationship to aspire to. Being obsessed with somebody. You need to have your own life to be in a healthy relationship. That's why this dialogue of, I can't stay away from you and you're the only, you're my life now is just, that's some creepy ass dialogue in real life.
But look, you can tell that story, just make it good and interesting. And this doesn't even do that.
Yeah, he makes a great point. At 10 minutes into this film, I felt like I was an hour in and I felt like I'd lost a piece of my soul. This is just not a good movie. The only thing original in it, and it isn't really that original, is the theme of teen vampire love, and that's been done. It's just a kind of a basic type of love story. It's really not doing anything extra.
Gonna throw it back to Mr. Schlender to either rebut or move on to your next exhibit.
Have they rested? I don't know.
Oh yeah, that was a while ago. Yeah. They kind of said a little bit, and you've already kind of been going. And we were all just going with the flow. I mean, everyone else in the room knew what was going on.
All right. Well, okay, no problem then. Well, I mean, because they kept talking and talking, but that's
wow. You were one to talk.
I was going to say, wait a second.
Hey, well, okay, so Mr. Kettle, if I may. All right, so
noted.
No, it's Ketola.
That's actually well played.
Common mistake.
Okay, so when we're looking at Bella and Edward's relationship, right? It's not necessarily being presented as aspirational or as even desirable. Edward frequently says, "You're in danger around me," and Bella, because she's a teenage girl who's governed by her emotions. And again, this isn't a dig at all teenage girls. Not all teenage girls are governed by their emotions. But this is the kind of character that she is. And so, of course, she's...
The ones who are going to get mad at us for saying that are.
Maybe. So you're saying as she's obsessed with Edward, but it's really, this is kind of the growing pains of like first love. This is how people feel when they fall in love for the first time. So she has all of these heightened teenage stereotypes, like being madly in love, this fascination with death. I mean, this is a capital R romantic kind of movie, right? Because then they do get together, but they're still dealing with certain temptations, right? Like in this movie and in the novel, they never engage, they never make love, right? There's never a physical aspect to the relationship apart from some kissing and dancing, right? Which kind of would actually go into my next point, but if they want to rebut any of the coupling points, Your Honor.
And my
Pause.
rebuttal is, it's just so boring and dull in the way they're trying to tell that story that we've heard so many times before and so much better.
Yeah, but the thing is,
there's
Marty,
nothing romantic about it. It's not romantic. It comes across as trying to be dark and moody, and it doesn't work. Instead, it's slow and boring.
Does the prosecution agree that the relationship is not set out to be aspirational?
So I would say that I think that anybody who writes these books and puts these things on films understands that people are going to emulate this or believe in it, or sometimes even use it as a manner to
but it's people who are already into that type
plot
of thing.
plot their own lives. Yeah,
movies don't make people do things, but
no,
like they say in Scream, it makes people more creative. So.
I think that people out there, dude, I worked with a girl who named her kid Bella. I think that there are people out there who really took these things to heart, these books, and wanted that kind of love.
My friend named his dog Bella.
Yeah.
Look,
Mr. Schlender.
So aspirational. I don't know about aspirational, but I would say that writers and filmmakers know that it's quite possible people will try to emulate this stuff.
Well, the people who want to emulate it, right? The neckbeards and the quote unquote nice guys. They know that's
what the neckbeards are gonna emulate.
They want their own Bella. That's what I'm saying. Like Bella shouldn't be with Edward, should be with me, right?
Well, now there's no reason to be flippant. Now hang on. Now,
there's plenty of reasons to be
flippant. One of the things I'll say that, and I'll give you a perfect example. When I worked at the theater, we had Avatar at the movie theater, 11 weeks. About 4 weeks into it, we got a notice from the theater company telling us to watch out for people who were seeing the movie multiple times and were looking depressed because people were killing themselves because there were several people that killed themselves claiming that they could never live in the world of Avatar. Now, are these people mentally ill? Sure. Or had problems? Sure, probably. But emulation, you see things on film. Movies are powerful. They have impact for a reason. It's the greatest media ever created in art for a reason.
Greatest media created yet. Mr. Schlender?
All right. Well, I could just move on to my next point in the interest of time. Yeah. So I just want to talk about how this works as an adaptation from the novel, because I had to read all 500 pages of Twilight, and I'm not going to let this point fall to the wayside. And we do
Your
need
Honor,
to.
I had to read all 5. all 5 books.
You read all 5 books?
I read all 5 books. Yeah, because
he wins.
He can have it.
The young ladies who were working at the theater when the movie came out, they were into them, and I couldn't understand what the hell they were talking about. So I went and read the books just to get some sort of commonality. And I ended up, and I'm a completionist,
clever.
so I'm a completionist. So boom, I had
Book
to.
4 didn't do it for me, so maybe book
Did
5
you
will.
even read Midnight Sun?
No, but I read The Host, and guess what? It's just Twilight with aliens. It's the exact same story with aliens. That's it.
All right.
Just Twilight.
I like it more.
Okay, so anyway, I just want if I could, Your Honor, just to get back to how this works as an adaptation, and I think the film does a good job of compressing the timeline. And one example of this would be Edward goes missing from school in the film after meeting Bella. In the novel, this is explained out over the period of almost 2 months, but the movie wisely condenses it. But you still know how Bella's feeling, and if you had read the novel, which most of the target audience at this time would be, because again, this was a very quick turnaround time of under 3 years, you know how Bella's feeling, you know what that distance did. We see this compression again as the relationship begins to flourish, and we lose interesting spots from the novel, like Carlisle's backstory is actually really cool. He was a vampire hunter who got turned into a vampire. Would have loved to have seen that in the movie. But we get enough.
That explains a lot.
Right? We get enough about the vampire family anyway, where we can really focus on Edward and Bella's relationship. So again, the compression works, but if you had read the novel, you're able to fill in these gaps pretty seamlessly as the movie goes. It's not very jarring. Because another point, the novel, it gives us the old Bilbo Baggins treatment. Bella gets knocked out and unconscious for the final fight with James. But in the movie, we get to see that final fight, And again, this isn't a Charlie Bronson movie. This isn't an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. The fight is much more subdued. It's very minimally directed. And then James gets killed by the 2 other vampire brothers and Alice. and which is appropriate because the focus is on Edward and Bella, and Edward needs to suck the poison out of Bella. So the film gives us. It's true though. That's what happened.
No, it's just the most ridiculous part of the movie, in my opinion. I'm sorry, I just brought it.
That's the most ridiculous part of the movie.
Yeah. Really, like this idea that he finally gets to drink her blood, but he can't kill her is, to me, as a vampire, pretty hilarious. Sorry.
Anyway, look. All I'm saying is that as far as this works in adaptation, and you look at other things at the time, the most obvious comparison would be like with the turnaround for Harry Potter. It does very well if you've read the novel, and it does very well if you have not, to the point where I would say this movie passes the book report test. If you had to write a book report based on the movie, you could pass.
Well, so it promotes illiteracy. That's good to know.
Well, wouldn't all movies promote illiteracy then,
Sick
Marty,
burn,
by that
Marty.
logic?
Sick burn, Marty.
Not foreign films with subtitles.
Oh, good point, Big Ben.
A lot of good points. Some of them people not in the case.
That's
Are you resting there, Mr. Schlender?
No, actually, I just got one really big point that I want to bring up. And it's actually, we've kind of touched on it minimally, is the baseball scene, right? And I want to say that this might be the most misunderstood scene in recent fiction, both in the novel and in the film.
All fiction? Okay.
Recent fiction.
All recent fiction, though.
Of all recent fiction,
Okay.
yes. Because of the amount of critiques this gets, I don't think you'll find another ill-critiqued piece right now. But maybe
hit me with your headcanon.
So, no, it's not headcanon. Listen to this, because it all adds up. Because, you know, I've read about it online everywhere, right? And to me, everyone is missing the most blatant and obvious meaning. We establish that this film and novel are largely about resisting temptation, right? Everyone can agree to that. As we approach the baseball scene.
No, I don't agree with that at all. I don't know.
But that's exactly what it's about. Oh my God. Edward says it all the time.
This movie is no. Oh,
yes.
Okay. Well, first off, Edward's not the main character. Bella is. The movie and the book focus on her. It's told from her point of view. So it's not about that at all. It's about longing and about what you can or can't have and what blocks you from that.
I mean, the temptation is a big piece of that. I don't know how you can divorce these two concepts. I mean, one of the reasons she's longing so hard after Edward is because he is resisting her advances, and
I'm not divorcing the concept. I just think I think that there's a broader concept that you're sort of dialing down into one thing instead of sort of pulling out and looking at everything that surrounds.
Well, I could concede both points. It won't hurt this point at all. So
okay, cool.
So as we approach the baseball scene, Bella and Edward are at the early stages of the relationship. It is getting pretty intense. Edward even says he's afraid if he loses control, he could hurt Bella. So what do we tell all young men to do when they are too excited? Think of baseball. The baseball scene is a literal
Slender
representation of the old anti-boner adage. I would argue the only way this could have been more obvious would have been, instead of a baseball scene, a scene of Edward taking a cold shower, and I bet the audience would have loved that. Am I right, Brian? So look,
I can see why my point was conceded so quickly.
I can't believe there wasn't a cold shower scene sooner.
This is actually insanely clever for a movie that is accused of taking itself too seriously. This is a capital C comedic standout. Now,
a question from the bench: that scene is in the book.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So facto, the book is clever.
The baseball scene's in there. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And it happens right at the same time too. This is very important. The things that are very close from the novel to the film are right around the baseball scene. And I'm convinced that this is why. Because if we go back to the questions at the end of the Twilight book that I read, it has discussion
Did
questions.
everyone get ready to answer those, Marty?
So Stephanie Meyer claims that Pride and Prejudice was an inspiration. And the question at the end of the book
or the philosophies?
the book, Your Honor. And the question asks, where is the comedy? Where's the romance? Well, the romance is very obvious, but so many people critique this, saying there's no comedy in it, that there's no self-awareness, that takes itself too seriously. And this just reminds me of people who didn't understand Showgirls was satire. It really
Oh
is.
my goodness.
The baseball scene is on that level. It's irrefutable as far as I'm concerned. It's holding up that mirror to society,
Well,
and that's why the baseball scene really, really shines in
Knocks it out of the
this.
park.
I would say it was a home run, Your Honor. And here's the thing too, because this is the comedic element, it should feel a tad ridiculous, because the reason the baseball scene's in here, it's not to introduce the bad vampires, it's not to show off the vampire powers, it's to temper the passions of not only the characters but also of the audience. And I will rest
I
on that,
object.
Your Honor.
it's the setup.
It's a plot device meant to introduce the other vampires. There's actual funny moments in this movie. Anna Kendrick supplies quite a few of them, and so then there are some others around the high school kids. That ain't it.
I'm telling you,
that you are reaching.
How is that a reach?
You
Think
are
of baseball
reaching
is
to the stars.
Sometimes you run up the wall, you reach and you catch them. All right. Both sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Ketola, Mr. Campbell, please begin.
Okay, I'm going to harken back to the classic Reels of Justice case number 211, The People versus Vampire's Kiss.
Love it.
Oh, good one.
Wow, it was so long ago. No way.
Where you, Judge Maynard
No,
said,
it was someone who looked like him.
These paraphrase of, you're either here for this movie or you're not. And if you're not, the whole movie hurts. The movie has no appeal otherwise. So, it's laughingly bad, so bad it's good. We know how that goes down here. This movie is bad. And if you want to go even all the way back to Reels of Justice number 17, The People versus the Omega Man, just as Ben pleaded to Ryan and Rob to find the Omega Man not guilty, as it inspired their favorite show's existence, MST3K, you must find Twilight guilty, as it's an all-time Riff Tracks bad movie. So, anyways, I close with that.
Can I jump in there and add?
Yeah, you guys.
Great.
Yeah, you're a team.
So do yourself a favor. Turn this movie on and play a drinking game. Drink every time you hear someone say, "Oh my God." You'll be drunk before you figure out what the plot of the movie is. Which, by the way, happens about an hour and a half in. It's Sweet Valley High with vampires. Just set to a bummer soundtrack to make you feel kind of down. This is not a tainted. It's not a tainted conversation. It's not a tainted triangle. It's just a tainted IP. It's badly written. It's the worst example of self-insertion of an author I have seen in a very long time. It's not a movie. And by the way, this is a movie. We're not talking about the novel. We're not talking about the ones that come after. We're talking about the movie and whether it works as a movie. If you have to read the book to understand or enjoy the movie failed. It's that simple. So, you have to find this one guilty. There's just really no other choice. Thank you.
All right, thank you both. Mr. Schlender, please present your closing argument.
Thank you, Your Honor. Today, I wanted to give Twilight the defense that I really think it deserves. I think it gets beat up a lot, and it needed a little help from the Reels of Justice. And I will admit, I had a lot of preconceived notions going in, and I was happy to see that a lot of the issues that I had heard critiqued about were very adequately addressed in the novel and in the film. Reels of Justice is about giving the best and worst a movie has to offer, leaving the audience with a good deal to consider and the tools to watch a film and make up their own mind. Twilight is a movie that a lot of people just let their mind be made up for them. I admit I did. I dismissed it as teeny bopper kitsch. It was ultimately not made for a man like me. And I say that because I was 18 in 2005 and 21 in 2008. So that is where intentionality comes in. Paradigm shifting comes in. We are capable of divorcing our own tastes and preferences and are able to judge the movie on the terms it is asking to be judged on. This is a popular movie. It had a targeted audience and it appealed to them. And I will admit, I enjoyed the novel and movie more than I anticipated. So maybe there is something in there for critical thought and analysis. In that jury room, Imagine having a conversation about Twilight with yourself from 2005 or 2008. What would your young self tell you? And what would you say back to them now that you are older and wiser? Thank you.
And sell now. Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Maynard Bangs, Mr. Big Ben Haslar, and my own personal brand of heroin, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
Right this way. You know, if the bonny lasses think sparkling skin is a selling point, then my glitter bomb side hustle is about to really take off. One can only hope.
It probably would. Yeah.
Hey, he doesn't run that out of the court, does he? We can't let him do that.
Oh, no, it's on the table. No. All right, Twilight. Yeah, I have not seen this movie unriffed until now. This is the first time I have seen it in earnest.
Is that same for you, Ryan?
I've seen this movie 30 times.
Oh,
really?
All right, good. Well, we'll save that. This was my first time seeing it. Just not even riffed. I've never even seen it riffed. So I've just never seen it at all.
It's amazing riffed. It's one of the best riff tracks.
It is.
All five
It's
of those
really
Twilight
good.
movies
No,
are amazing.
he's
Oh my God,
he's
so
right.
good.
The riffs actually for me
Here,
save the movie.
Clif, you are not in this room. I'm going to tell on Marty on you.
No.
So Ben, keep going.
So I came into it and I didn't quite hate it at first, but it's like when the romance starts happening that I kind of start to see this creepiness that people kind of allude to. And what I think the big flaw is this director doesn't understand like supernatural action, and they don't really understand like the creepiness of like this older person and the younger girl. That's when it really turns icky to me. And yeah, him just constantly holding himself back because he's so dark and tortured. I think the good points on the defense were some of those, or on the prosecution, were some of those weird shots, sort of that unhealthy obsession and the self-insertion that happens. Although I do agree with the defense that it's probably not as bad as people make it out to be. A lot of people like, ooh, sparkly skin. That's, like, I mean, that's dumb, but it's not a reason to hate on it. It's not something to plant your flag into.
I'd say this movie has been called like the worst movie ever made. Probably by the most people I've ever heard.
Not even close.
But that's definitely what a lot of people would say. Like, not so much now, but like 15 years ago. People hate this franchise for sure.
And I was kind of disagreeing though when he was like bringing up points about the book, like Carlisle being a vampire hunter. Man,
yeah, that would make this sweet
movie so much better.
Carlisle's my favorite character. He's never tempted at all. He's a true G.
Ryan, what did you think?
Well, this movie sucks, no pun intended.
You saw it 30 times.
I've seen it 30 times because I used to work at Blockbuster when this movie came out. And so we would have something on the DVD player constantly. The movie that the distributor wanted us to play all the time was Twilight. So I would see it twice a day, 3 times a day. Like I've seen this movie a lot. But it wasn't until I saw the riff tracks that it actually unlocked and I could peer into the Matrix finally. And I could pass the badness and I could see what made the movie fun. But what really struck me in rewatching this movie is that the first couple of times I saw this movie, I thought that Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart were bad actors because they could not elevate this material. And now I look at them, they're 2 of our most interesting actors that we have working today. Their choices in material is stellar. They have been knocking it out of the park constantly. But in this movie, they are not delivering, and they have such promise, and they're young and pretty, and they're fantastic, but they have a little chemistry. They do, but I mean, you could see why they dated. I mean, it makes sense, but at the same time,
I didn't know they dated. That explains it.
Yeah, they did. But it's just they're such drips in the movie. They're so they're charisma black holes.
Do you think that's a fault of the directing or just the
I
fact
do.
that
I think that comes down to God, I can't even remember her name. Catherine Hardwicke, who I think can be a good director. She did make 13 a couple years before this, but you could tell that she was in an indie drama mindset trying to make a big budget vampire movie.
Supernatural.
And she was exactly. And she was not up to that task at that time. Maybe now that she's had a couple a couple more films under her belt, maybe she could do it now. I mean, I think it's kind of weird that she's the only woman who directed an actual Twilight movie out of the 5 movies that they made. I think that's kind of shitty.
I didn't realize
But
that.
yeah, I mean, this movie's fucking god awful. And to speak to Dylan's point about the baseball scene, no.
Oh no,
It's the most embarrassing fucking thing. Oh my god. I had forgotten how bad it was, and then I rewatched it, and I was just like, no, that's dreadful. Oh my god. Oh,
even if
you have no imagination.
It's a terrible scene, I agree, but I understand its rationale, and if it was unintentional, then it's a great kind of Freudian slip moment.
Ooh. But it does look terrible. We can all agree that. Like,
oh yeah, everything.
The whole movie looks terrible.
Weird.
Well, hey, not case, Stu.
The fact that Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a show that aired on the WB in 1997 and looks better than this movie that was made with considerable resources in 2008, that is an indictment against the film. It looks really bad.
Maynard, do you have any last points?
Stu Crew.
Hell yeah. Ride or die. Love that case.
So I think Clif and Marty really they threw some of the heavy punches early. The dialogue's awful. And I get it's probably the way teenagers talk, but
that's not how we talked.
We? How old are you, Ryan? Are you a vampire? It is painful a lot. Now, I enjoyed the hell out of this movie, but it's that so bad I'm entertained. It was that. I was laughing at them. The movie's not supposed to be funny. I was laughing at it for sure. But I had a blast. I belly laughed through most of this movie. It was a blast. But I'm laughing at it. No, they're not going to be as funny as I am. And so what does bug me though is I think the relationship is gross. I think some things we've brought up here. I think Schlender had said something about Edward never growing up. Horse shit. He's not Peter Pan. He didn't live on a magic little island. He's been in the real world for over 100 years. He's emotionally mature and should have no interest in this, besides the fact that obviously he can't read her mind and she smells really good.
And attending high school like for the rest of your life? Why?
And that's it. Why? Right. Like BS to Schlenzo's thing. He can be homeschooled because he can pass any test. Like, are you really homeschooling him? He knows all the stuff from school because he, so he could pass.
His whole supposition there, like, assumes like there's no siblings like graduating through this school. So like people attending graduations, like, hey, isn't that Edward Cullen kid still here? What's up?
Right. They know the Cullens. They have lived there since ancient times. Nobody's like, why don't they ever age? Like, it's so ridiculous. Anyway, so
we're ready to lock in. Ryan.
What's up, Ryan?
Yeah. Obviously I hate this movie, but if I'm putting together which case I liked more, I gotta go with Dylan. So I'm gonna go not guilty just to make this very interesting.
I had a blast for all the wrong reasons that the movie wouldn't want. I think there's some cool ideas here. I also think that movies can exist just for a preteen audience. We know there are kids' movies that are made just for kids. Adults can go of a certain mindset, but like movies all have target audiences, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I do think the relationship they put in here is an unhealthy one, and I do think it's absolutely aspirational. You are supposed to want to be Bella and Edward.
Yeah.
You're supposed to want to be. And it's creepy. Along with that,
it's creepy that an 18-year-old girl wants to die so bad that she falls in love with a blood-sucking beast. That's not problematic at all.
It's a damn weird movie, but I hope those girls had a great time with it, but I'm going guilty.
Well, I'm tempted to go not guilty because I have it on good authority that if Marty keeps losing, he'll keep coming back, and I like having him around. But the plot that I had, or the point that I agreed with the most, is that it's aimed at the preteens. It's kind of like when you make a kids movie, but you don't put like any real thought into it. You can have a kids movie that has a lot of intellect and a lot of charm to it, like a Miyazaki film, and you can have one that's just there to make noise. This is just for preteens. This is just for people who have read the book. It doesn't try to nail it down any better than that. So that was the point I agreed with the most. Therefore, I say guilty. So let's go tell that very handsome judge.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of the People versus Twilight, we find the defendant guilty.
Boo. But understandable.
Yeah.
You made the right choice.
The verdict is so rendered. I hereby sentence Twilight to work at Blockbuster Video, where Twilight is played on loop all day. The court is adjourned.
Weird that you planned that.
Some of the best ones come off the cuff.
This is Mumbly Mumblerson, the undead star reporter of the Gabagool Gazette, reporting to you live from outside the Reels of Justice. Mr. Ketola, Mr. Campbell, you had an easy lift this week. Ooh. Would you care to share your thoughts on the jury's verdict?
Yeah, it's good. It took me 5 times, but combined with Clif, we got a 1 by shooting some fish in a barrel, and it does feel good. Maybe one day, we'll win Ryan over. We just have to pick the right Kate Blanchett movie or something, but we'll find something. We'll find something to win you over, sir. And I also would like to take a moment to give special thanks to Stinky Whizzleteats, wherever you are. It's been a while since we've heard you report on the court stairs. Barely remember that character. And also, let us never forget to give thanks to Greg Talley and Ryan Smith, because if it wasn't for the Revival League podcast 7 years ago when Joel Hodgson decided to kickstart MST again, we might not know each other. Reels of Justice, keep going. I'm glad you're here every week. I listen to you all the time. And Dylan, one day you will win a vampire case, sir. If you had won today, I would have been so happy for you because you would have won all.
Ooh, such a spooky answer. And here comes Mr. Schlender. Excuse me, can we get a word on how you feel about today's ruling?
Well, Mumbly, it's so good to see you, even though you're kind of incorporeal. But with this case, I was just really hoping we could discuss what seriously made Twilight bad and what was defensible, because there is so much out there about this movie that is just so knee-jerky and ham-fisted. So Clif and Marty brought the right arguments that did prove why this movie was bad, and I was happy for that, because the conversation around Twilight can take a very weird turn very quickly. I would not want... if all movies got responses like this, I would quit the show, because it is just not fun diving into that pretty toxic world. But I think we did come to the right conclusion today, and I'm glad we took the high road to get there. Marty, congratulations on your first win. It was a long time coming, my friend. And Clif, I don't think I like you very much. No, I'm kidding.
I love you. You were a great arguer. I thought it was
Clif,
fantastic.
you were really good, man. We were going blow for blow. That was pretty.
Yes, sir.
So.
I loved it.
Yeah, that was excellent. So yeah, just great job, you two. And like I said, I'm just really glad.
Great job from that judge too.
Yeah, that baseball theory had me dying, man. I was just, that was some inspired shit.
I stand by the baseball
Mumbly,
theory.
get us out of here. Step out of the light. You're so sparkly. That's all we have from the courthouse today. Let's go back to the studio for post-trial analysis and never speak of this again. See you in October.
I don't think that was the real Mumbly. He does not sound like the very real Mumbly Mumblerson that I'm familiar with.
Oh, the one I shot in the head?
Yes.
No, the one you didn't shoot in the head.
No, I
shot
just
them both
saw
in the
guys. I
head.
just saw him walking down the courthouse steps. That was the real Mumbly Mumblerson, but he was transparent. I could see right through him.
Yeah,
We've had a mystery on our hands.
He slimed me.
Marty and Clif. You smell that? So what's been keeping you guys busy? I know you've got some projects
lots.
cooking.
Oh yeah,
How's
I
that?
mean, our latest film, The Love Song of William H. Shaw, is making its rounds through the film festivals, and it's been getting some good recognitions. We actually won a few awards recently, which is kind of cool.
Congratulations.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Hopefully it'll be available on streaming platforms for y'all to see next year, or maybe sometime this year. Physical media release, we wanted to put out our trilogy on Blu-ray too, because this one was the third part for longtime listeners of the show that remember anything I talked about ages ago. But anyways, what we really wanted to talk about today is Clif and I started a podcast up.
Ooh.
We did.
What's the name of that podcast?
It's called Making Pondo, Talking Pondo. And it's kind of a varied show. We interview people that we worked with on films and have a discussion about making movies and that type of thing. And then also Marty and I once a week will give each other a movie that we haven't seen, and then we'll talk about that movie. So I think the last one that we did was like Sisu and something else. And so he hasn't seen Sisu. We'll talk about it. It was fantastic. It was really good.
Yeah,
very inspired by you guys and all the various
very inspired by you guys
podcasts that made the mini work shift. Yeah.
Well, but I'm sure it's not that bad though.
Boo, man. And I love your guys' theme song, Making Pondo, Pondo, Pondo.
Yeah, Pondo is.
I should have recorded that, Marty.
Do you guys have he'll sing it for you again later. Do you guys have is there a definition to this word Pondo? It's like central to your universe.
Oh, it's the name of our film company, Pondo Enterprises, and it's the character's name. Well, let me explain this. I always get so tongue-tied talking to you guys. It's like talking to celebrities.
Oh, jeez. We're Facebook friends. Come on.
There's a movie from the 80s called The Party Animal, and the main character's name is Pondo. And we always thought that was such a weird word, and it's such a bad. It's one of those so bad it's good movies, but it always made us think, if this got made and released, well, then we can make a movie. So it was one of those, and then that word just stuck, and now the word just means us.
It means us.
Now it's part of your eternal mythology.
Love it.
And if you want to hear two lawyers literally go down defending a bad movie, bring us on for The Party Animal.
Oh God.
we will defend that movie to our death.
You will never rest.
Yeah.
Never rest.
Never.
We'll look at scheduling that one in the future.
It'd be fun.
Vengeance for Pondo. And where is this podcast available?
Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's everywhere. Shout out to all the people at Global that are listening to this. I've got few new listeners for you that are desperate to hear this whole Twilight debacle.
Should you
very
start
good.
from the beginning, or is there a specific episode that shines?
Well, they just started.
We
start from the beginning.
We just did one, and I'm gonna use it as my movie that I'm gonna give you. So I'll talk about that here. But we just did an episode on this particular movie. I'm gonna give you as my suggestion that I thought was just a fantastic episode.
Well, we always ask for recommendations from our guests for movies that you think people should see. So, what's a movie that you think people should see?
I think you should see a movie called The Late Game. It just came out. It's about a guy who moves back into a town after breaking up with his fiance, and he runs into a guy at a bar his first night there who invites him. It recognizes him as the guy who played beer league hockey with him a couple of years ago and invites him back to play beer league hockey. And the whole movie is basically one night of beer league hockey, and it's fantastic. It's a small indie film, and I really recommend it.
Oh, that does sound fun.
Yeah, neat.
Marty, what have you got? As good as that? It's got beer league?
No, that one's pretty good. That one's hard to beat. That's only on Amazon right now, actually, but it's totally worth the rental. My pick is another vampire movie that we did on Talking Pondo recently, Near Dark from 1987.
Yes.
It's an interesting take on the vampire lore, directed by Catherine Bigelow before she did Point Break and The Hurt Locker, and it's got Bill Paxton, Lance Henriksen, and an interesting twist on what it means to be a vampire.
Oh, that sounds awesome. If it's got Lance Henriksen, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
Bill Paxton is amazing in that movie. Oh my god.
Yeah,
so
it's good film. Good flick.
Awesome. No, I like it. Schlenzo, what have you got? Some sort of Liam Neeson vampire movie?
God, no. Actually, I went pretty serious because I was in a serious frame of mind when I was watching this. So, on the subject of forbidden love, Twilight is hardly the first to draw critical ire. Indeed, Richard Strauss's opera Salome debuted in 1905 to much controversy, and music critic Alex Ross often cites it as being the touchstone or kickoff event for music as we know it in the 20th century. So in that spirit, I am recommending a film version of the opera Salome from 1975. This is not the taping of a stage performance, but a full-on film version of the opera with compelling direction that only a camera can capture. Salome is adapted from the Oscar Wilde play of the same name, which is in turn adapted from the biblical story of the death of John the Baptist. It is funny to look at the controversial aspects of the opera now because they seem so quaint by today's standards, but it does serve as a critical cultural artifact. Amazingly enough, this version is available on YouTube for free, so enjoy the sights and sounds of one of the 20th century's most endearing works.
Wow. Culture.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's fantastic. It was serious.
Yeah.
Mine is not going to be as serious.
Thank God.
And I'm shooting right from the hip too, because I had no headspace. So, so right after I finished Twilight, I laughed, I cheered, I clapped. I was ready for the fucking sequel. I was psyched for Jacob to fuck Edward up.
Boy.
So I sat down and I watched New Moon, and this
Oh,
was a
geez.
mistake. The little winks and joy that you kind of see in Twilight where they're sort of having fun, absolutely gone. It takes itself so seriously. The relationships become even more toxic when Bella and Edward break up and Bella refuses to leave her room for almost a year or something. and done in montage. It's so crazy, and it completely kicked my enthusiasm that the first one kind of had for me. I was like, oh, this could be so bad it's fun. No. The second one's not so bad it's fun. Is just bad. Even the werewolves aren't cool. He's still whiny. But at least he gets a haircut. Anyway, if you can get yourself to sit through it, I guess go ahead and do it. I was thinking I might make it through all of the series, but after barely making it through that second movie, I think I am ready to tap
You're
out.
tapping out.
I am.
Maynard, the messed up thing is the last two movies are kind of good.
Oh, and then I'll keep going. Okay, I'll keep going.
I know.
I'm a little like the vampire console could be cool, but they're not doing anything.
I know, but I'm just saying, like it's like kind of putting up with a lot of enduring a lot of annoyance to where you're finally like, it wasn't too bad.
Hey,
I'm a complete.
And we're all Team Jacob because he's jacked, right? Like he got
but
in great
he's
shape.
whiny.
For that, right?
He's whiny.
I'm Team Anna Kendrick. She's the only, or Mustache Dad.
That's not how that works.
No,
Ben.
I'm Team Carlisle, the vampire.
Oh yeah, Carlisle's cool, but okay, forget it.
I'm Team Alice.
Right.
Yeah, my favorite vampire in the whole thing is Alice.
Okay, small thing then. If Bella is friggin', maybe it comes up in the other movies, if she's impervious to all the vampire powers, why the hell can Alice see things about her future?
She's not impervious to all the vampire powers.
Well, okay, then
Just
I'll
the ones
need
in
more
plot
stuff.
convenience.
Or having an
Everything in
X-Men powers
every
argument.
vampire she's met, at least in the second movie, she was impervious to all the powers. Let's stop talking about it. Big
Oh,
Ben,
well,
what have you
maybe
got
then.
for us?
For my recommendation, I channeled my inner Schlender, headed over to Tubi, which, despite all evidence
What's
here to the
happening
contrary,
today?
Tubi does actually have highly rated films on the platform.
No, it
despite what
doesn't.
Schlender says. And I watched Christopher Reeve, The Man of Feel, in Somewhere in Time. And
Oh,
look, it's
great
super-
pick!
that's a
Holy shit!
good
I
one.
I almost watched that
That's
the
a
other
good
day.
call.
It's a good one.
That's so
And
good.
If supernatural love stories involving dark, moody monsters who are tortured is your jam, God bless, have fun. But like Maynard says, stay away from New Moon because Bella is the real monster of that story. I prefer time travel as my love story supernatural narrative. Christopher Reeve hypnotizes himself back in time, which is only slightly more believable than that time he whipped around the planet, reversing the axis and thereby time for some reason. And instead of Margot Kidder, he does this for the ravishing Jane Seymour, a woman that any man would gladly lie comatose in present day to time travel back to be with, any one of us.
I would do that now. I would do that
Yes.
with Jane Seymour now.
I love Ryan.
She's alive, right?
Romance
I
films
hope
really
so.
aren't for me. But given a dollop of sci-fi to latch onto, made some pretty decent watching. And Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour are both charming as hell, and the location is beautiful. It presents an ending that James Cameron flat out stole for one of his features. Plus, it doesn't make you want to gobble down antidepressants like the time traveler's wife did, or it isn't cringe like Twilight. It is a very decent
Time Traveler's
program.
Wife. Yeah, no, great recommendation, and I did see
That's a
that
good
on
one.
Tubi. That's why I watched it so recently. That's insane.
And it's good, right? See, Tubi has good movies.
Yeah, no,
Oh, they do.
all the movies on Tubi are good.
But you said critically acclaimed, and I doubt
Guys, our movies on Tubi, so they definitely have good
And it's
movies on
good.
Tubi.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
you
you're
see?
right. They have great
Thank
movies
you.
then, all
Fantastic
right?
movies on
Holding
Tubi.
my hand
Ruin
up.
their
The best
check.
movies.
The check
They're very
clip.
You're right. They have great movie. I love all the movie they have.
Well, Ryan, if
Right,
you're so
right.
smart, what's your
Yeah,
recommendation?
send us on home.
My recommendation this week concerns one of my favorite directors, Abbas Kiarostami, a French film from 2010, Certified Copy. I would say at this point that the story follows ... but this is more about incident than it is about plot, as is expected with my recommendations. What we do have is an antiques dealer played by the radiant Juliette Binoche and a successful author played by some guy. She's French, he's English. They're on opposite sides of the cultural divide. As the film progresses, the viewer begins to question just what is going on in their relationship. Are they married, meeting for the first time? Are they on the outs? Are they on the ins? It changes from scene to scene in a way that is legitimately discombobulating and therefore more than a little exhilarating. I always appreciate it when a film keeps me in the dark and on my toes, and this mightily fits the bill. I can't say that I got it per se, but it's been rattling around in my brain ever since I watched it. Certified Copy is currently streaming on, you'll never guess, Tubi. No, just kidding. The
Oh.
Criterion Channel.
No. Fuck! You got me again every week. He gets
Oh
me.
man, I told you, Criterion's just Tubi for fancy people.
Mhm.
I, can see
I
that.
wouldn't know, not being fancy.
You're fancy to me, Ryan.
God, I could practically see your pinky up the whole time you were talking. My God.
That's
Hey,
true.
look, it says Training Day, Get Out, The Batman, and Hellboy are all on Tubi.
Wait, which Hellboy?
Yeah, I was about to say, which
Yeah,
Hellboy?
wait.
That's
Tune in next
destined.
week.
That's destined. I actually just added that to our wish list, like just really recently. That's funny.
The new one?
What? Yes. Now with
Ooh.
that, we are all out of show, but we want to thank our guests Marty and Clif for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it was a blast. I really appreciate you having me.
We're going to be tuning in to Making Pondo, Talking Pondo, and you can follow your Facebook page. Do you guys have a Twitter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, then
Twitter,
all right.
Instagram, all that good stuff.
Well,
what
share
is
it. Share it.
At
Tell the people where
at
to
Making
find you.
Pondo.
At Making Pondo, yeah, on
At
Twitter
Pondo.
and at Making Pondo and at what is it, Marty?
On Instagram and X, and there's a Facebook group for it too. Yeah, we even
I'm
have a
not calling it
letterbox
X.
page too.
Letterbox. There you go. Follow Big Ben, and you guys can follow you back. It'll be like very mutual. And we hope everyone else will join us again as well as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Ryan, we don't get anything.
Oh,
my
Ryan's
God.
gone.
What?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
We don't
Oh.
get a lot. We got nothing at the end. We just have
I
to go out on this.
haven't done that in a while, have I?
Yes,
You
you
do it
do
every
every
week.
episode.
Every week. I need
is
my
happening
ending.
this
Give
week?
me
Now
my stinger.
this
I
is
need my
the
stinger.
That's it. We're keeping all of that. So.
Oh my God, I love this episode. New favorite episode.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.